Episode 13 is a fucking clip show.
While a lot has happened and a lot of concepts have been introduced that warrants it, I really think they could have held off another 6. I mean, we haven't even hit the major villains yet, just hints of them. It's not that it's badly framed, mainly as it's from the point of Zaruba, who makes fun at others' expenses, but the reason I can't like it... It ends with Koga fighting horrors on a burning train, falling through the air vertically into an exceedingly deep chasm.
Why the hell were we not allowed to see the events that led up to that? I mean, there can't have been any more concentrated awesome!
Worse, it's padded out with a 4-minute long music video of Garo's second opening theme, Savior in the Dark, by Jam Project. As I've said before, Tokusatsu series usually get a second opening theme only if they're begging for ratings, but Garo seems to have an exception to that, each series conforming to the more standard format Japanese series tend to have, with making new openings after 13 or so episodes. Much like Silly Go Round from .hack, this is another song I found years and years before discovering the actual series. If I'm remembering correctly, it was used as part of one of the various AMV Hell collections. This version shows a bit more of the conflict in less abstracts, and are well imaged with the lyrics. Nightmare acts similarly to Taiga, giving us Rei's backstory. Rei was an orphan named Ginga, taken in by the previous Zero, Doji Suzumura, along with a woman named Shizuka, who he fell in love with. Over time, he's given training to succeed Doji as a knight, as he had no other family. However, while that gives his origin as a knight, it's not a happy story. As one evening, Ginga came home to find his father murdered, and the killer stabbing its sword straight through Shizuka. The perpetrator wore Makai knight armor, and Silva, Rei's Madoku, fingers Garo without reason or evidence. After all, if it was Garo, even in low light, that golden armor would shine. Made worse with the fact that the Garo armor wasn't active in that period, as Zero is a senior knight. So his whole hostility against Koga? It's all based on evidence that could have easily been verified, and yet he never does. With Shizuka's death, Rei refused to acknowledge himself as Ginga any longer, existing as little more than the knights out for vengeance. Which of course makes more enemies than friends, Kaoru's attempts at a peace offering going badly. Like Koga, Rei has the same fundamental flaw, a refusal to discuss a problem with those it is relevant to. Drop hints about the incident, see if he actually knows anything from his responses, or confront him directly. He's like Koga in this, as despite all this time having passed, he still hasn't gotten around to telling Kaoru that she is going to die. I say Zero is a senior knight, as while he's been seen less than Koga, he already possesses his own Mado horse, ironically named Ginga, meaning he already passed his own set of trials before Koga did, requiring his hunts having started earlier. It's relevant in the episode's case, as the Mado horses allow Makai Knights to enter static portals to the horror realm when they appear, so as to counter the occasional mass manifestations of horrors, such as the ones the watchdogs call them in to counter, 100 horrors about to break out. The thing about the Cerberus trio? They are not nice ladies, and they lie. For in the horror realm, there are far more than 100 horrors manifesting. Had either of them attempted this alone, they would have been devoured through sheer numbers. It really seems like an impossible task, as they used 30 seconds of their armor limits even getting into the horror realm. However, this is where one of those exceptions comes up. Apparently altered realities suspend or extend the time limit the armors can be maintained without consequence, but only for so long. The pair trigger blazing armament and find the entity that's caused this mass resurrection, destroying it, and in proxy every single horror at the same time, escaping before the forward portal collapses. They confront the watchdogs who greet them with their gratitude. Yeah, great. I would think they'd be more apologetic about sending 2 hard-to-replace knights intentionally into a death trap. Then again, the watchdogs are dicks. In Statue, Koga crosses the district boundaries while hunting the horror gargoyle, who possesses a sculptor who, well, plays voodoo doll with his models. Only the doll is made of clay, which can mold and... Yeah. Incidentally, Gargoyle first manifests through a stone wing and flutters around out of sight in a manner not unlike the Weeping Angels, which would premiere the following year on Doctor Who. To add to the weird similes in this case, Gargoyle's form is really reminiscent of the Tengu warriors from Power Rangers' 3rd season. Only actually scary. Weird. I have to credit the cinematography in these scenes, which emphasizes the alienness in a far better way than what was attempted with the Groggy and Kuga. However, apparently following a horror's activities across districts is against some law of the Makai Knights, as Koga is punished for it. I think the idea is it's similar to police jurisdiction across county or state lines. But it's still a stupid law, in the sense that these are monster hunters. When you track something, you can't always stick to just the borders. It should be more of a guideline with punishments for when you don't have a good reason for crossing it or abuse the activity. Hell, Ray has not once been punished for being active in the East District, though he's punished unfairly for pretty much everything else, making this whole occurrence more suspect.
The watchdogs are dicks.
Kaoru for once doesn't come across the horror by happenstance, instead the host coming up in her research to finding her father's night book. Sadly, she misinterpreted statements she's tied to being relevant in her quest, the guy not actually knowing her dad, just being a fan of him. But once in the lair of a predator, you're kind of screwed. There's something of an unintended running theme as of late. Kaoru finds a way to tick me off with her actions. Try telling that to anyone that tries to make a living as an artist. Oh wait! A lot of people have a difficult time trying to express themselves, and while any skill takes practice, talent is usually the deciding factor on whether your productions are noticed. And to top things off, his main base of operations is, unfortunately, in the West District. But it means we get more of Ray being awesome, in addition to the second worst wireworks fall in the history of Tokusatsu. What's the worst? That would be the one in the climax of Double Return's Kamen Rider Axel, which lasts for over a minute.
At least this one is short.
Gargoyle dies, his former host mesmerized by the beauty of the Zero armor. In Red Sake, Koga goes to honor a commitment of his father's, going to see the Makai priest Amon. No, not that Amon. Not that one either. Oh goddammit. Amon, called as 20 years before, Taiga and Amon were engaged in a game of bar chess. It's like normal chess, but the battles are determined through Makai magic. And he wants to continue the game in the only night horrors do not spawn. As the match goes on, it's revealed that Koga has grown really, really fond of Kaoru. Why eludes me, but hasn't had much luck in finding the Varancas fruit required to cure her of the blood curse. Fortunately, Amon does, one of the fruits ripening in the Crimson Forest, an area blockaded off from normal reality due to the mass infestation of horrors. And he's more than willing to retrieve it for him when it's ready, a bit before the final days of the curse. He also warns Koga that Barago still lives. An artifact belonging to the man had been found, the weathering on it not enough to account for all the time he's been MIA. Koga has long believed the entity that killed Taiga had been just another horror, but this makes him begin to question that assumption. In Aquarium, a man named Mitsuru finds an abandoned goldfish and ends up feeding it his blood on accident. Unsurprisingly, the fish is a horror named Haru. It can't live outside of water, but it can grow more massive and take from victims their body parts. Okay, I have a phobia of swimming in any body of water capable of supporting life. This really did not help that paranoia towards being bitten by swimming fishies. Of course, since Haru has to use Mitsuru to get her meals due to being limited to the fish tank, it means Koga is not having any luck finding it. So, for the first time ever, he actually has to use Garo as actual horror bait, despite telling the watchdogs that's all she is to him. That has always been a lie, while he worked to try and save her. And now that he's near the goal, he ends up using her, tricking her into the open by asking her to paint something for him. She is of course targeted by Haru and Mitsuru, and when Koga follows and kills the horror... And now the truth comes out. But not all of it, as he doesn't tell her that he was trying to save her. Is it really so hard to tell her that? Really? I mean, there's not getting her hopes up if he fails and shattering the relationship they've built. Tell her he didn't want her worrying while she wasn't in critical danger, or inform her early on he's working on it so she needs to be careful. Hell, there are a lot of situations which would not have come up had he told her the truth. And now he does something just as stupid, acquiescing to her request to remove the tracker ring, so now she's in the wind.
I agree, this situation should never have come up in the first place.
Of course, to make things worse, Amon has been found murdered, the watchdogs pinning it on his apprentice, Jabi. Jabi was apparently a childhood friend of Koga's, who has naturally not been brought up once before this. Jabi is also responsible for stealing a set of horror blades from the Cerberus trio, which is abnormal because horror blades are usually sent back to the horror realm as previously mentioned. It's against procedure for them to retain them as they have. Of course, this isn't thought of by Koga, but he refuses their orders, as after the crap they've been pulling, he refuses to obey any order from them that did not come from a higher up. Understandable, they have been abusing their authority. Kaoru's come across and crashed with Ryuzaki, her therapist friend we have not seen in forever, who she tells everything to, the man not being surprised by any detail she reveals. Which, in and of itself, is a warning sign, on top of offering her his home.
Villain. He's the villain.
While Koga's not taken the orders to eliminate Jabi, he still tracks her down, wanting her side of events. And Jabi is too hostile for her own good, exceedingly resentful of the watchdogs, as they have perpetrated this divide between the knights and the priests. Which, when you look at it, is intentionally weakening their forces. Priests' numbers are not limited by the armors. They can make Mado tools, and can shoot elemental attacks by drawing glyphs in the air with a brush. A support priest would make battles a hell of a lot easier, to the point some might not even need the armor to eliminate evolved horrors. Anyways, she's just trying to do what the Cerberus trio haven't been, send the daggers back to the horror realm. She has no idea who killed Amon, but rumors are abound about a Makai Knight that eats horrors, another reason why she's become wary of them. However, the watchdogs are not idle, contacting Rei to do their dirty work, offering a revival of Shizuka if he can kill Jabi and get the daggers. And they also free Rei to kill Koga, further misleading him.
Oh, so that is why you punished Rei a few episodes back. Because Makai Knights should punish their own!
Rei finds Kaoru, using her as a hostage when he confronts Koga, offering her in exchange for the daggers while also revealing the 100 days part of the curse. Koga tricks Rei into releasing Kaoru, and the pair armor up for another brawl. Like the last one, the exchange between them is very well executed, actually having a point to it this time. Rei pulling out whole new skills to counter Koga's repeated regaining of advantages. They use weapons, their fists, the terrain. It's overall brilliantly done. And then Rei finally asks the question, why did Koga kill Shizuka? And Koga doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. The only reason Koga loses is he restrains himself from a death blow, their armors timing out, and Jabi in turn saving Koga from death. She heals their injuries, Jabi teasing Koga and Kaoru at the obvious mutual attraction. Yeah, probably. Anyways, Kaoru is finally told that Koga's been trying to save her all this time, leaving her rightfully conflicted. After all, doing things for someone and trusting them with critical knowledge are two different things. You wouldn't be so forgiving a doctor that gave you free healthcare, but refused to tell you about an incurable disease you'd contracted. It's good that Jabi can get the fruit for them in place of Amon, as soon as they send the daggers back to the horror realm, that is. Unfortunately, the watchdogs have more than Rei to rely on. They also have their personal manservant Kodama, who can channel energy through the use of sound into blasts, and with him backing up Rei, it's a struggle to finish the ritual of sending, and one that fails, as even though Koga convinces Rei to do his duty as a Makai Knight, the portal is too small by the time they are thrown in, smashing them and causing the 12 horrors to hybridize into one single monstrosity. The pair armor up, but it's simply too strong for them. However, a third knight is there. One that devours horrors, the hybrid creature its newest snack. And Rei recognizes it as the thing that killed Shizuka. The Black Wolf. Kiba. Kaoru's last days have come, her body wrought with pure agony. Makai Priest or no, Koga's going to the Crimson Forest. The reason it's dangerous for knights, however, is they've put most of their time into mastering skills that are augmented by their armors, and due to the sealed nature of the forest to keep it from the rest of the world, the rifts the armor manifests from can't be opened. He can change the Garo into its battle form, but that's as far as it can go, meaning to get to the fruit, he'll need to avoid battle as much as he can. The forest has more obstacles than just horrors, other supernatural beings and tricksters manifesting. And also an apparition of Kaoru's soul, who's being drawn into the afterlife among her dreams. And she's just given up, not seeing a point in living if she's just going to be the damsel. Huh. I didn't think that would work in dreams, but whatever. What's weird is Koga asks Zaruba to guide Kaoru out of the forest and back to her body. But Zaruba's a physical object, and she's currently a spirit. Wouldn't doing that render Zaruba incorporeal? And since he's a soulless construct, wouldn't that mean... You know what? I'm just gonna say magic and move on. The reason the fruit is so rare is, like the cursed blood, it is an extremely potent attractant. A Mido tool made to hunt the horrors of the forest, using it as its own form of bait, and wow does that thing look like it was ripped straight from Onimusha. The construct is intrigued by the concept of compassion that has motivated Koga to challenge it, using its vast power to permit the creation of a rift Koga can use to armor up. Despite it, and pulling out Goten, the fight does not go well. This machine was built to battle horrors 24/7, and 100 seconds isn't enough time to gain a proper advantage, even with the fruit left on display. Fortunately, Koga's not alone, Rei helping out at the last moment, as Koga collapses. They manage to get to Kaoru in time, and finally cure her of her curse. And that was only episode 20, out of 25. At a museum, an old man breaks into a display case of an old gun, holding an unusual billet, which he uses to shoot a security guard. While this occurs, Koga and Kaoru make up, Kaoru finally thanking him for everything he's done, while Koga in turn shows Kaoru a field where he grew up. One that near perfectly mimics that of the painting he bought from her, bringing things pretty much full circle. As he's out shopping, Gonza is given a letter. It's a death threat, from the Watchdogs, the trio having hired a specialist to eliminate the errant wolf. Koga, of course, goes to the confrontation, which is presided over by the horrible fights, and... well, crap. Don't get me wrong, swords are rule of cool, but you don't normally bring a knife to a gunfight and expect to come out on top. Fortunately, Makai Knights are more agile than most humans, his swift movements enough to counter many of the wielders, while Bon Fights mocks the outdated nature of his sword. After all, guns are easy to get, easy to use, and easy to kill with. And for a horror that views himself as his kind's answer to a Makai Knight, they're an obvious weapon. Hell, the only reason Koga is not wounded by a point-blank shot is Zaruba catches it in his mouth. That ring is dynamite! Koga armors up, and as expected, the Garo gear is bulletproof. However, Bon Fights was a decoy all along. The real specialist was a human. Remember Miri, the serial killer who once possessed by the horror Morlock killed with portals? Well, this is her father, a man consumed with grief over her loss that the Watchdogs could manipulate into executing this with simple tools and instructions. It's why I wish the motivation and setup for her story had been better handled, as this episode shows the fallout from those killed from the conflict with the horrors. The underground nature of it, meaning that there are uncountable people affected by it like this man, who have lost their loved ones. It falls flat because, Miri was a serial killer. Even if she wasn't possessed, someone would have inevitably put her down. But we can forgive that, as this has all been driven from the grief of a father. Koga refuses to get in a fight with the man or acquiesce to his games, even if it might give him a chance to get out with his life. As knights don't kill humans that haven't been touched by a horror, no matter the reason. And so, the man makes it so he will. For on top of the bullets containing horror essence, he was also given the horror dagger containing Moloch within it, meaning more were sequestered away. He plunges the dagger into himself, forcibly fused with the horror. But due to this, he's racked with pain. Before this, he didn't realize the suffering people possessed undergo. He couldn't see that death was a mercy to whoever was possessed, no matter how innocent or malicious they were. That a horror is more than a monster, a predator. It is a curse, a blight that harms everything and anything it touches. And the knights are not to blame for it. This was needed. To show that those who die are not forgotten, that they have impact, and grief can turn anyone down the wrong path. Whether it is into madness, revenge, or to open oneself to manipulation by those only out for themselves. However, this was only the opening act to the final arc. For something else has nested itself within Kaoru. The mark on her neck is that of a gate. Normally Inga buildups create them naturally to release a horror into the world, but on occasion they're imprinted onto humans directly to use them as embodiments. However, they are few and far between, and only occur for special horrors, such as Messiah. No, not that Messiah. No, not that Messiah. And no, not that Messiah. This Messiah is the originator of all horrors, an entity that longs to reach the human world, for some reason. Rumors about Kiba exist that it gains the powers of horrors it ingests, meaning it's likely it's the one that caused the seal to appear on her, so Kiba's bearer could become immortal.
Kenshin Himura is a Makai Knight? For the love of sanity, someone write that!
No, it's actually Barago, the scar etched into his face as Taiga's final act. Supposedly a wound that should have killed him. I don't see how, it's just a scar. Barago, after being denied the right to wear the garo armor by Taiga, sought power, which made him a target for the Kiba armor, promising him power and immortality by working to devour Messiah. And here's where we learn why the 100-second limit exists, as beyond that, the armor corrodes the soul of its wielder, releasing restraints on its power and transforming the wearer into a canid horror-like entity. Koga realizes from this that Barago must be responsible for his father's death. Joy! Now Koga and Rei can compete on who kills him. Another series-long subplot that's addressed here is Kaoru's dad's night book. Apparently the owner of the preschool found the entire collection of the books that were printed in storage, sending them over to her. And much like the mural that was an epitaph to her mother, the book was an epitaph to those who fight in the shadows to protect everyone, and his own brief encounter with it. But from this, she realizes her own death would save a lot of people, nobly asking Koga to put her down so Messiah can't spawn. However, and worse, Barago appears, after Kaoru. Rei shows, and, as expected, the pair argue, but Kiba is far out of their league. But seeing Barago makes Kaoru remember something else. On the day she saw the garo armor as a child, she also saw Barago. Yes, she's been the designated host for years, the man watching over her from afar. After all, he wouldn't want to lose his conduit to immortality. Worse, nearly every horror has been off of a theme, manifesting from objects they find. Barago has intentionally been corrupting them to manifest horrors, intending for him to devour them later, and the Cerberus trio are under his thrall, wanting Messiah to manifest in reality. So, they make a plan. They'll set up a barrier to protect Kaoru at the mansion, and hunt down Kiba themselves, as without Kiba, Messiah cannot be drawn out of the horror realm. And so they set out.
物語には無限の結末がある。未来は自分の手で描くものだから。
And thus, why her father left the final page of the book blank. With the jig up, Barago brings the girl's corpse to the watchdogs so they can leave the confines of the light, revealing the trio were once human that the upper echelons made immortal, as long as they remained in said light. They fused together with the corpse, creating the entity Golm, which is a reference to a demonic dog related to Ragnarok in Norse mythology. With them gone, Koga and Rei inform the Makai Senate, being authorized to eliminate the lot of them, though Koga defies them when they declare Rei will not help him at all as punishment for his past acts. Which is really, really stupid when you take a moment to think about it. After all, Barago kicked their asses even together, and now he has backup. It's ludicrous to think that would have turned out as anything but Messiah getting through, and everyone the world over being totally screwed had they actually done as ordered. However, as the endgame approaches, it is time to reveal more secrets. Yes, Ryuzaki is indeed the villain. He is in fact Barago, using the Garo versus variant of a Polyjuice potion to hide his deformity. He attacks the Saejima mansion and manages to kidnap Kaoru, which enrages Koga. The next exchange goes over as badly as the last, though I'm surprised tossing them over a bridge didn't result in a splashdown, though I'm wondering why Barago simply doesn't kill them. And I can't help but wonder myself. This episode aired in 2006. The Evil Overlord list was a thing by then. But nope, he leaves them alive. Kodama blocks their next assault, revealing he has a knight-like form of his own, one far more organic. But coupled with this man being responsible for his childhood friend's demise, he goes over his limit, and becomes a monster. The Soul Beast form easily crushes Kodama, before attempting to climb the tower Barago set himself up in, as Koga begins to be devoured by the armor. Fortunately, Rei's there to bring Koga back, forcing him to confront himself once more. For this was the purpose of the Trial of Shadows, that you'll be able to come back from this. It's ultimately the danger of choosing to be a protector in a job that requires a hunter or soldier. You're willing to sell yourself to your inner darkness in exchange for that power, and destroy everything you strive as a result. When you fight monsters, one must be wary to not become a monster. The pair recover and enter, Golm not happy that Kodama was killed. The Cerberus trio viewed him as their surrogate son, so she's out for revenge. So she fights... Rei? What? I mean, yeah, they've had a vendetta against Rei since he appeared, but Koga just killed her son!
It doesn't make any sense!
What makes even less sense is, even though Golm can kick his ass from here to Toei's studios, she shapeshifts her form into Shizuka to lure Rei into a false sense of security. What gives her away is she calls him Rei and not Ginga, as he didn't take the name Rei until after she died. Finally, she just assumes her monster form of... an angel from Bayonetta? Well, considering the fan service in that game, it figures she'd be nipping out. And more of my budget goes to the sensor bars. She shoots a laser at him, which seems like it kills him, but the shot is deflected off of Silva. Kaoru's laid prostrate before... a Stargate? Well, it is a passage to other worlds, just usually not to abstract realms. And to make things worse, Kaoru is no longer in the driver's seat. Messiah's taken control. However, it turns out Barago's been deceived. The 1,000 horrors... that's not to lure Messiah out, it's her meal so she can have the power to break through to the human realm, devouring Barago, Kiba, horrors and all, through the conduit Kaoru provides. Koga engages the Messiah-possessed Kaoru, trying to restrain her, only to be beaten down. But he manages to, somehow, break through to her with words that are really not that inspirational. She collapses, and since Kaoru is being used as a medium and no other way to stop the awakening, they use her to track it back to the horror realm and stop it at the source. He finds Kaoru stuck between the realms, and assures her that after this, it will be all over, causing every image she's produced over the course of the series to spawn in this mental realm, including an unfinished one of a winged Garo, which is absorbed into Koga. Let her. Really? Really?
And so it's time for the final battle. So, what does Messiah look like? You know, knowing my luck, it'll be a topless giantess whose necessitated censoring will bankrupt me.
I'm ruined! I'm ruined! Yeah, I was expecting something far more monstrous than a giant 95% naked Taoist deity painted bleach white. Something of an anticlimax there. I really should have expected this, however. When you look back at the opening, she's teased at in both of them. Messiah's mere presence spawns legions of horrors who swarm Koga. Oh hi, manifestation of Kairu's father. What are you doing here? Those words were said to him by Taiga, when he asked what he could do to help, which started the entire book project in the first place. And in a world of abstracts, it's not a bad idea, as her art resonates with the image Koga absorbed, granting him wings. It's sadly temporary, as the armor, no matter the influence used to enhance it, always defaults back to its basic state upon its next summoning. With Rei, he continues to fight Golem to the standstill, Gonza coming out of nowhere with a Makai blade he can lift, but can't use in battle. Huh. So he's only half worthy. Still, he can throw a blade to a knight, managing to return one of Rei's swords to him in a critical moment, leading to Golem's demise. Koga's power boost is enough to knock back Messiah from reaching the human realm, weather further blows, and striking right through the deity. The horrors spew out from the body as Koga tries to escape the horror realm, dragged back down by Kiba, only for Kaoru to reach out and, for once, save him. The Stargate ejects them back into the realm of the living. So, it's all over, right? Right? Nope. Extra boss time.
I guess you could call it the finale of the finale? What?
Barago's dead, it's just the empty armor, but somehow it can suppress the rifts, meaning no armor. However, Zaruba asks if he can be thrown into the rift edge to see if he can circumvent it. Apparently something goes plaid, as that Stargate, it's actually not that small. It's a rather large room, so it could have fit in it even after expanding, but for some reason it just flies out of the building, causing it to collapse. Koga and Kiba riding atop it as it flies, yes, flies, not falls, through the sky. This scene is just freaking excessive. Another competitor for worst fight scene in the series, as it just goes on and on for 5 minutes. They crash into a building, then it's dislodged, then it rolls down a street, and yet neither combatant loses their balance from the force of the spin or is dragged along its loop. The cloth and skin should be friction burned away. Kiba's butch should be sparking. Gah!
My fight with Munavalza was less gratuitous, and I do internet reviews.
I hate that I have to hate this scene, as the non-CGI and green screen portions of it are excellently choreographed. It's just the framing that to me makes it suck. Finally they crash, an explosion doing more to hurt either party, and this is where help comes in. Zaruba's plan was to strengthen the connection to Koga through the rift, allowing him to summon the Master Garo armor brought down in the hands of Charubs. The Master armor contains the power of every Makai Knight to bear the title in its long history, the strength enough to finally destroy Kiba in 2 swift strikes. However, it's not without cost, as doing this has caused catastrophic damage to Zaruba, who rusts away. The series wraps up with one final scene as the parties prepare to go their separate ways. Koga reassigned to the North District while the Cerberus Trio's activities are investigated, Kaoru's presumably being paid and going to study in Italy, and Rei's returning to doing business as usual, but not before passing on a gift, a repaired but unfortunately blank Zaruba. This is sadly a missed opportunity, as remember, the ring Kaoru wore for most of the show was an extension of Zaruba himself. They could have written it as he transferred himself over to it and was going to be lacking his special talents for a while, instead of losing a tool and a friend that's been around for generations. Kaoru gives him something as well, the completed copy of the Garo story, the final page upon witnessing it bringing tears to his eyes. What the page was, whether it invoked a memory of his father, or he realized how much he was going to miss Kaoru after this, we just don't know.
And that was Garo, Chapter of the Black Wolf. And I really enjoyed it.
Strong characterization, unique monsters, situations, and powers that, while sticking to a limited pool of skills and abilities, are expertly wielded by the protagonists. It keeps to a focused set of players with their own motivations. Its reputation as a horror series, however, is a bit exaggerated, as it's certainly a more mild example of the genre, knowing when to take itself seriously and when to do things more tongue-in-cheek, but not breaking the setting. While the horror's acts are certainly appalling, born out of the worst of humanity, I feel Tokusatsu could use more of how they frame these monsters, to show how much of an actual threat these entities are, and dealing with them should be met with seriousness. Cause let's face it, when you show a strong monster with clever abilities, then have it conquered by morons, it cheapens the value of the villains. I think its biggest problem was how the main story was just shoved into the background into the last sixth of the series. Afterwards, it just hits you faster and faster, when much of it could have been woven into the filler to space it out. A cloaked figure watching over Kaoru every now and then, possibly intervening in some of the horror attacks to help breed mystery. Ryuzaki is barely a presence in the show, so while he's established, you don't get why the show keeps coming back to him. Maybe checking on Kaoru while she lives with Koga and giving him the stink eye. While some things were set up early, such as the watchdogs being jerks and raise animosity, the show thrives off of misunderstandings that could have been dealt with through talking. And there really wasn't a reason to not do that, making it come off as a Toshiki Inoue series in how it reveled in failures to communicate. Amon and Jabi could have been established earlier, revealing the existence of the Baracus fruit in the first place instead of knowing of it and needing it brought back up again. This way we'd know who they were when they came back into relevance, so they're not just seen once and then killed off. Provide a bit more of an emotional impact by further establishing their relevance. Hell, they could have swapped the position of the clip show and Amon's episode, and that would have worked better in and of itself. Some of the scripts could have used another draft to iron out some of their logistical hiccups, but to a far less degree than I normally expect. The CGI effects vary from awesome to downright painful depending on their utilizations. The monsters weren't bad, and some of the green screen set recreations did look good, in particular Dantarians, but there are some times, in particular the final battle, where they were being downright gratuitous. Use it to build the atmosphere and accent their powers, not replace the fight entirely. Still, it's better than a number of series I could call out where the end-all be-all for effects is massive explosions. There are a few other addendums directly related to Chapter of the Black Wolf, the side story Smile, Kiba Gaiden, the miniseries Byakuya no Maju, and the movie Red Requiem, that all occur between this series and the next, Makai Senki, and with any luck I'll be discussing them in due time.
Overall though, I do recommend checking out Garo. It's an interesting series and certainly one that promotes pushing the boundaries with its work. I look forward to more entries in the future, and hope it can maintain this quality throughout. Next week though, how does a gritty reboot of a 70s anime series sound?